This is steel. It looks like any other steel, but it isn't. This is problem steel. The moment it hits that dock, it adds to a problem which has been growing steadily more serious for all Americans for the last 10 years. Altogether, more than 11 million tons of foreign steel and more than 500,000 tons of pig iron were unloaded at American docks during 1967. The steel alone represented more than 12% of all the steel products used in the United States. But it's not so much the percentage itself that creates the problem. It's the rate at which the percentage has been growing. In 1957, foreign steel imports amounted to a little over 1 million tons. These imports grew tenfold to more than 11 million tons in 1967. 1 out of every 8.5 tons of steel used in this country last year came from foreign mills. This ship is unloading West German steel. It's good steel, made with the most modern equipment by highly skilled workmen. However, the workmen who made it get less than half the $40 a day the American steelworkers receive in wages and benefits. In addition, German steelmakers, like many other foreign producers, are granted tax benefits, export inducements, and other governmental assistance which further reduces their costs. Thus, a German producer can ship his steel 4,000 miles across the Atlantic and up the St. Lawrence Seaway and land it here on the docks of Detroit for as much as $30 a ton less than the same steel can be delivered by an American company located in Pittsburgh or Gary, Indiana, or even right here in Detroit. Since Detroit manufacturers can recognize a bargain when they see one, they have taken advantage of this situation. In 1967, more than 1.5 million tons of foreign steel arrived here. But the problem is not confined to Detroit. On the West Coast, Japanese steel producers find themselves in an even more favorable position. The Japanese steelworker averages less than 1/4 the wages and benefits received by American workers. And Japanese producers also receive assistance from their government to help them increase exports. Consequently, steel shipments from Japan have been entering West Coast ports at the rate of about 1.5 million tons per year. And the same thing has been happening on the Gulf Coast. At Houston, the heart of the oil and gas industry, more than 1 million tons of pipe, steel plates, rolled sheets, and other steel mill products were unloaded from foreign ships in 1967. At New Orleans, another 800,000 tons of foreign steel entered the country, much of it to be sent up the Mississippi in barges for use in St. Louis and other Midwestern manufacturing centers. This rising tide of imported steel is having an injurious effect on the entire American steel industry. Markets for a wide variety of steel mill products have been disrupted. Stainless steel producers, for instance, have seen imports climb from 1% of the domestic market in 1959 to 16% in 1967. Producers of structurals and piling have lost 15% of their market. Pipe and tube makers have lost almost 11% of their market. Wire rod mills have lost nearly 1/2 of their American market and have very little prospect of recovering any part of it. And now the same dangers confront the sheet and strip mills. These mills, which account for 39% of the tonnage of the American steel industry, have seen foreign steel penetration of their market almost quadruple in the last 4 years. Even with the most modern equipment, the largest and most complex processing machinery, highly automated plants and computerized controls, the most advanced technology, American rolling mills cannot compete with the low-cost steel from abroad. Under the trade conditions that exist today, American steel companies are finding that the cost gap is insurmountable. To sum up the situation which is facing the industry, Here is the president of American Iron and Steel Institute, Mr. John P. Roach.
The real difficulty is that foreign steel-producing countries have been increasing their steelmaking capacity much faster than the demand for steel has been increasing in their home markets. Therefore, they have had to turn more and more to foreign markets to unload the production from this excess capacity and maintain full employment in their steel industries. Since the United States is the largest user of steel in the world, we have become their prime target, and the situation is getting worse. Japan, for instance, expects to be able to produce 110 million tons of raw steel in 1975, but she will have use for only 80 million tons at most. What will she do with the other 30 million tons?
If the present is any indication, she will send nearly half of that 30 million tons to the United States, the only market that is both accessible to her and big enough to absorb this much. And the Japanese will be joined by the Germans, the Dutch, the Belgians, the Italians, the French, and any other country which has an excess steel producing capacity. In a few years, this flood of low-cost foreign steel could very well take over 25 or 30% of the American market. And this would mean disaster for the American steel industry. The manufacture of steel is a complex operation requiring the best efforts of skilled workmen employing modern and highly sophisticated equipment. Each 1 million tons of steel produced in a year represents the output of about 7,700 men, from the mining of the ore to the melting of the steel to the rolling of finished steel products. Thus, the more than 11 million tons of steel imported during 1967 represents job opportunities for about 85,000 American workers. To discuss the employment aspects of the import problem, here's the Vice President of the United Steel Workers of America, Mr. Joseph P. Maloney.
The American steel industry has embarked upon a policy of large-scale investment for modernization. However, there has been criticism that the American steel industry has not been aggressive enough in keeping abreast of technological advances. Yet we are aware that technological advances result in fewer man-hours per unit of production because of the increase in productivity. Hence, only a growing domestic demand will absorb our manpower. During this period of modernization, then, we simply cannot afford to see an excessive capture of that increased domestic demand by foreign producers. We do not oppose their access to that increased demand, but we have come to the conclusion that 10% of that market is indeed reasonable enough. Otherwise, accelerated technological investments will be paid for through the loss of American steelworkers' jobs.
The American steel industry cannot stay healthy and meet all the demands which may be placed on it unless it has an adequate supply of skilled workers and a steady flow of capital investment. Hundreds of millions of dollars are needed for research, plant modernization, and technological developments. More than $2 billion is being spent every year by the American steel industry for these purposes. And investors will not continue to make these funds available unless there is a reasonable chance of showing a profit. Today, sources of investment funds and a continuing supply of experienced workers are being jeopardized by the rising imports of foreign steel. Moreover, the existing gap between American and foreign employment costs is so great that no amount of money or technological improvement could close it in the foreseeable future. To explain what ought to be done about the problem, here again is Mr. Roach of American Iron and Steel Institute.
Many people have the mistaken notion that foreign steel imports are coming into the Atlantic seaboard and to the West Coast ports only. This is far from the truth. Here on the docks at Cleveland, you see evidences of flat-rolled sections in coils and a great number of other products manufactured by foreign steel makers. And this scene can be repeated in Buffalo and in Chicago and in Detroit. We believe that the best way to halt the increasing penetration of the United States market by foreign steel imports is through the adoption of a quota system such as that embodied in bills already introduced in both the Senate and the House of Representatives.
These bills limit imports of steel and pig iron in any year to 9.6% of recent domestic consumption. Therefore, imports could move up or down according to the size of the American market. If the market gets bigger, total imports could increase. In other words, foreign steel producers could continue to get a fair share of the United States market, but they could never cripple our steel industry. A threat to the American steel industry is a threat to the entire nation. Steel is involved in almost everything we use, ride in, sit on, or wear. It provides the sinews of our transportation system, the framework of our factories and office buildings, the support of our highway bridges, the backbone of our schools and hospitals, the cutting edge of our highly productive agricultural enterprises. Steel is the most versatile, the most adaptable, the most widely used material in our modern industrial society. But steel is not only the foundation of our society, it is also the defender, the bulwark. We need to be self-sufficient in steel because it provides us with the tools required to deter aggression and uphold freedom around the world. No first-class power with these global commitments could dare to rely on foreign sources for such an essential element of its strength as steel. It must have adequate, reliable, and efficient sources within its own borders. In the interest of the steelworker, the national economy, and the national security, the American steel industry must be strong and healthy. Only then can it play its vital role in helping us to fulfill the worldwide obligations which we have undertaken.